They were looking for a missing college student. What they found instead had been in the ground for decades, and somebody had been back to visit it recently. This account is reconstructed from search and rescue logs, sheriff's department statements, and interviews with the people who were there. Some names have been changed. What happened on that mountain did not. Sawtooth Ridge sits at 9,000 feet in the Colorado high country, and in late September, the light up there turns thin and gold about an hour before it disappears completely. That was always the hour Marcy Dunlap hated most. Not because it got dark, because it was the hour when hope started running out, and everybody on a search team could feel it happening at the exact same time, even if nobody said it out loud. Marcy was 44, a physical therapist 5 days a week, and a volunteer with Ridgeline County Search and Rescue every other weekend, which meant she had spent more nights than she could count sleeping in the back of a pickup truck, waiting for a radio to crackle with either the best news of somebody's life or the worst. She had joined the team 11 years earlier, after a stranger spent 6 hours looking for her own father, when he wandered off during a fishing trip and lost the trail back to camp. He came home, cold, embarrassed, shaking a little, but alive. Marcy never forgot the volunteer who found him, an older man in a faded orange vest who just shrugged and said, "Anybody would have done it." She had been showing up on weekends ever since, trying to be that for somebody else's family. This search had started 3 days earlier, on a Thursday morning, when a 19-year-old college student named Tyler Kessner told his roommate he was heading up the Sawtooth Ridge Trail for a day hike. Day pack, a liter and a half of water. Back before dark, he said. He never came back. By Friday afternoon, Ridgeline County had 40 volunteers on that mountain, 3 dog teams, and a helicopter that kept getting grounded by wind, gusting sideways off the ridgeline. Tyler's mother had driven up from Denver overnight and was standing at the trailhead in a windbreaker, 2 sizes too big for her, holding her son's photograph out to every volunteer who passed, as if one more person seeing his face might be the thing that brought him home. Marcy worked a 12-hour shift that day and found nothing. Not a footprint, not a water bottle, not a single thread caught on brush. There was one false alarm late Friday, the kind every search team dreads and half hopes for at the same time. A dog team picked up a scent near a creek crossing 2 miles south, and for almost 40 minutes, the radios went quiet with tension while handlers worked the trail. It ended at an abandoned campsite. Cold ash, a torn tarp, nothing that belonged to Tyler. Just somebody else's forgotten weekend, weeks old. The disappointment on that mountain was almost physical. Marcy remembered Tyler's mother sitting down hard on a rock when the all clear came through, like her legs had simply stopped working. By Saturday evening, the search had covered 11 square miles and turned up exactly nothing, and everybody on that mountain was carrying the same quiet, terrible math in their heads. Statistically, the odds of finding a missing person alive drop fast after 72 hours. They were already past that. That final push had started with a quick briefing at the trailhead, the way every shift change did. Russ went down the list of grids, who was covering what the dogs had already cleared. Marcy remembered looking around at the faces in that circle. A retired firefighter, a nurse who'd pulled a double shift before driving straight up the mountain, a college kid earning credit hours for an EMT program. Ordinary people who had nothing to gain from any of this except the chance that it might matter. 10 more minutes, said Russ Calloway, the team leader, checking his GPS as the light went gold, then gray. Then we lose visibility and we've got to pull back for the night. Nobody argued. Nobody wanted to be the one who said out loud that 10 more minutes probably wasn't going to change anything. Marcy's team had been assigned Grid 7. Charlie, a stretch of dense lodgepole pine about a mile off the marked trail, on the theory that Tyler might have wandered off route, chasing a shortcut back down the mountain. It was brutal terrain, deadfall stacked 3 feet high in places, visibility dropping fast under the canopy. Every fallen log another chance to turn an ankle in the near dark. Marcy was working the north edge of the grid, sweeping her flashlight low across the forest floor when she noticed the ground dip in a way that didn't look natural. It was a rectangle, roughly 6 feet long, 3 feet wide, sunk maybe 4 inches below the surrounding earth, the way ground settles after something underneath it has broken down over years. Old, she thought. Her first instinct, immediate and certain. This has been here a long time. "Russ," she called. "Got something." He picked his way through the deadfall, and when his headlamp landed on the depression, he went quiet in a way that told Marcy he was thinking exactly what she was thinking. "That's not Kessner," he said finally, crouching down at the edge of it. "Ground's too settled for that. This has been sitting for years, maybe decades." He brushed a gloved hand across the surface, and that's when they both saw it. A patch near the head of the rectangle, maybe 18 inches across, where the dirt was darker and looser than everything around it, packed differently, like it had been turned over and pressed back down. Fresh. Not years fresh, weeks fresh, maybe less. "Somebody's been out here," Marcy said quietly. "Recently. The other 2 members of the team, a college kid named Danny doing this for course credit, and a retired firefighter named Beckett, came over and stood at the edge of the light without saying much of anything. Nobody wanted to be the one to say what they were all thinking. That whatever this was, it had nothing to do with why they were out here, and everything to do with something worse. Russ radioed it in as a possible unmarked gravesite. Within 20 minutes, the search for Tyler Kessner had a second, quieter operation running alongside it, because now the Ridgeline County Sheriff's Office needed people on that mountain too, before overnight rain could wash away whatever was left to find. Marcy wasn't supposed to stay. Civilian volunteers don't get folded into an active investigation scene. But investigator Dana Ruiz, compact, sharp-eyed, in her 50s, someone Marcy had worked alongside on 2 prior searches, asked her to stick around long enough to walk through exactly what she'd seen, in exactly the order she'd seen it, before the memory got tangled up with everyone else's version of the story. "Nothing on file," Ruiz said an hour later, flipping through a folder under a portable work light. She'd already made 3 calls. County records, the state database, even a retired sheriff who'd worked this territory back in the 80s, and might remember something nobody had bothered to write down. Every answer came back the same. No burial permits for this section of the county. No missing persons cases that map to unmarked land out here. Nothing. "So, somebody buried a person out here illegally," Marcy said. "A long time ago. That's one possibility. What's the other one?" Ruiz looked up at her. "The other one is that somebody buried a person out here a long time ago, and somebody's been coming back to visit." By Sunday morning, a forensic recovery team was on site. 2 technicians from the regional crime lab, working the dig in careful grid squares with hand trowels and soft brushes, photographing every layer before disturbing the next. 100 yards away, life kept moving at its normal, urgent pace. Dogs strained at leashes. A drone buzzed overhead, mapping fresh terrain for Tyler Kessner, the boy this entire search had started for, whose name, for a few strange hours, had almost stopped being the only name on that mountain. It took most of the day before the technicians reached anything. Skeletal remains. Adult. The lead technician wouldn't speculate beyond consistent with an adult, deceased somewhere between 15 and 30 years. Most of the clothing had broken down completely, but a belt buckle had survived. along with the corroded remnants of a wristwatch, its hands frozen at some hour that no longer meant anything. And near the right hand, close enough that it likely hadn't shifted far from where it was originally placed, a small metal object that made Ruiz go very still when the technician lifted it out in an evidence bag. A dog tag, not military. A pet tag, the kind clipped to a collar. Corroded, but the engraving was still legible under a loupe. Duke, and under that, a phone number with a local prefix. The kind of exchange that told Ruiz it was at least 2 decades old, maybe older, from a time before the county had run out of new numbers and been forced to change its system. That evening, back at Incident Command, a folding table and 3 tents in a gravel lot near the trailhead, Marcy sat with a cup of burnt coffee and watched Ruiz work the phone for almost an hour. Search operations for Tyler Kistner had been suspended for the night. The volunteers pulled off the mountain to rest before first light. Everyone in that gravel lot was tired in the specific, hollowed-out way that comes from hoping hard for one outcome, while quietly bracing for another. Marcy told herself she'd leave after this next cup of coffee. She didn't leave. "You want to hear something strange?" Ruiz said, sitting down across from her. "Always. That phone number on the tag, disconnected now obviously, but old utility hookups sometimes stay linked to a property for decades, even after the number gets dropped or reassigned. I ran it. Traces to a property about 6 miles from here, belonged to a family named Holbrook, Grady and Louise, brother and sister. Where are they now? Grady died in 2003. Louise sold the property the year after and moved to Pueblo. She's still alive, 81 years old." Marcy set her coffee down. "You think she knows something?" Ruiz exhaled slowly, the kind of exhale that comes from 20 years of learning not to assume anything until you have to. "I think a dog tag with a family's old phone number ended up buried with a body near their land. And either that's the strangest coincidence I've seen in this job, or it isn't a coincidence at all." The next break came from an unexpected direction at 6:15 the following morning, while most of the team was still asleep in trucks and tents. Ortiz, one of the dog handlers who'd spent all week on the eastern grid, radioed that his dog had hit a strong scent alert near a rock outcropping 400 yards from the original grave site. Ground that hadn't been searched yet because it sat outside the planned boundary. For one gut-wrenching moment, everyone assumed it was Tyler. It wasn't. It was a second disturbed patch, smaller and shallower. When the technicians reached it an hour later, what they pulled out wasn't human remains at all. It was a rusted metal storage box, the kind sold at any hardware store to keep documents dry. Inside, wrapped in a plastic bag that had mostly held together, were photographs, dozens of them, faded, water-stained in a few places, but recognizable. A young woman smiling in some, unaware of the camera in others, taken from a distance, through a window, across a parking lot, the kind of photographs someone takes when they don't want to be noticed taking them. And on the back of several, in handwriting blurred slightly by moisture, but still readable, the same name, over and over. Carol Ann. Ruiz pulled Marcy into this part, not because procedure called for it, but because she needed somebody level-headed to talk it through with. "Somebody who wasn't already buried," she said grimly. No pun intended, under the weight of the active search still running around them. "Statewide missing persons database, 30 years back. Any spelling of the name," Ruiz said, scrolling a laptop balanced on the folding table. "There's a Carol Ann Whitfield, no E, reported missing out of a town 2 counties over, back in 1998. 22 years old. Case went cold inside a year. No suspects, no leads, no body, until maybe now. For most of that day, the investigation leaned hard toward a different theory. A rumor had circulated for years about a hunting camp that used to sit somewhere on that ridge back in the 90s, unregistered and half forgotten. And for a few hours, Ruiz genuinely believed the photographs might belong to some drifter who'd used the mountain as a private hideout, with no connection at all to the remains 40 yards away. She spent the afternoon on the phone with the county archive, chasing old land use records and hunting permits. She found nothing. No cabin filings, no camp registrations, nobody else with any documented reason to be out on that ridge ever. It kept circling back to one name. The name Holbrook came up again by mid-morning the next day, when a county records clerk, digging through files that had only recently been digitized, surfaced a 1998 incident report filed by a neighbor, a domestic disturbance call at the Holbrook property. Raised voices, a woman crying, according to the statement. No arrest made, no follow-up documented. The kind of report that, in a rural county with limited resources in 1998, got filed and quietly forgotten. The neighbor who'd filed it, a man named Pete Ostrander, still lived nearby. He was 73 now, and when Ruiz drove out that afternoon, Marcy tagging along, mostly because she asked, and Ruiz was too tired to say no. He answered the door, looking like a man who'd been waiting a long time for somebody to knock. "I always wondered," he said, not inviting them in, "about that girl." "Which girl, Mr. Ostrander?" "Grady had a woman staying out there for a while back in the 90s, younger than him by a lot. Wasn't around long, maybe a year and a half. Then one day she just wasn't there anymore. Grady said she left him, went back to wherever she came from." He paused, looking past them toward the tree line. "I called it in once, the yelling. Nobody ever followed up, best I could tell. And then she was gone, and everybody just sort of moved on." "Did you believe him?" Marcy asked. "That she left?" Ostrander was quiet a long moment. "No," he said finally. "I didn't. But it was a long time ago, and Grady's been dead 20 years, and I didn't have a single thing to prove otherwise. So what was I supposed to do with a feeling?" He looked at Marcy then, not Ruiz. "You found her, huh?" "We think so." He nodded slowly, like something inside him had finally been allowed to set down after 26 years of standing up. "Good," he said. "Somebody should have come looking years ago." Neither of them said much on the drive back. Marcy watched the fence posts blur past the window and thought about how a single phone call in 1998, one report, filed and never followed up on, had sat quietly in a filing cabinet for 26 years, waiting for somebody to open the right drawer. Ruiz finally broke the silence somewhere past the county line. "This is the part of the job nobody tells you about," she said. "It's not the finding. It's wondering how much earlier it could have happened if one thing had gone differently. Grady Holbrook couldn't be questioned, couldn't be arrested, couldn't be tried. He was 2 decades in the ground himself, buried in a proper cemetery in town, with a headstone and a date, and nothing at all to suggest what he might have done out on that ridge before he died." But Louise could still talk. Ruiz drove to Pueblo 2 days later. Marcy didn't go. That part wasn't hers to be part of. But what Ruiz told her afterward, in pieces over the following week, went like this. Louise Holbrook, 81, living alone near a strip mall, had known something. Not everything, but something. She remembered a woman named Carol Ann staying at the property for months in the late 90s. Grady had introduced her as a friend, though Louise, his sister, had never quite believed that framing. She remembered the woman disappearing suddenly, and Grady telling her the same story he'd told the neighbor. Gone back home. Didn't want to be found. She remembered Grady spending time alone on that ridge in the months afterward, more than usual, always coming back quiet. And she remembered finding a dog tag once, years later, in a drawer in his workshop. The tag for a dog named Duke, who had died long before Carol Ann ever arrived at that property. And Grady snatching it out of her hand so fast it frightened her. I told myself he was sentimental, Louise said, according to Ruiz. I told myself a lot of things. There was a long pause on the recording. Ruiz said before Louise added one more thing. That in his final years, Grady had started driving out to that ridge alone, sometimes twice a month, and would come back hours later without ever saying where he'd been. She never asked. Some part of her, she admitted, hadn't wanted the answer. The DNA results took 6 weeks. 6 weeks in which Marcy went back to her regular life, back to physical therapy appointments and grocery runs, and thought about that mountain more than she expected to. When the results finally came back, they confirmed what everyone involved had already started to believe. The remains belonged to Carol Ann Whitfield, missing since 1998, quietly written off by a system that had run out of leads decades earlier and moved on to other names, other families still waiting. Her younger sister, Denise, was located in Arizona, 50 years old now. Half her life spent not knowing. When Ruiz called to tell her, the first thing Denise asked, before any question about how or why or what took so long, was, "Can I finally bury her somewhere I can visit?" There's a strange kind of arithmetic to a story like this. A search team goes looking for one person and finds another. Grief that had been sealed shut for 26 years finally gets a name and a place to rest, while a new search, for the boy who started all of it, kept running the entire time, 400 yards away, then 4 miles, then across an entire county as the days went on. Marcy thought about that a lot afterward, how 2 searches had started on the same mountain and ended so differently. Because Tyler Kestner was found, alive. 9 days after he first went missing, 12 miles from where anyone had been looking, having gotten turned around on a game trail, sprained an ankle, and survived on stream water and sheer stubbornness until a rancher checking his fence line spotted him waving from a hillside. The rancher later said Tyler's first words to him, before hello, before anything else, were, "Is my mom still here?" She was. She had never once gone home. He came home to a family that had never stopped looking for him. Carol Ann Whitfield came home to a sister who had never stopped hoping. 26 years too late for anything except the truth. Marcy went back up to Sawtooth Ridge one more time that fall, alone, on a Saturday, when she didn't have anywhere else to be. She stood near the spot where the ground had dipped, where she'd knelt with her flashlight and felt that first small wrongness in the dirt. There was nothing there now. No marker. The county had restored the ground as best it could, and in a season or 2, pine needles would cover it completely, and any hiker passing through would have no idea what the earth beneath their boots had silently held for 26 years. But Marcy knew, and in Pueblo, Louise Halbrook knew, and in Arizona, Denise Whitfield knew exactly where her sister was now, for the first time in half her life. And the not knowing that had shadowed her for 26 years had finally, quietly, come to an end. Denise flew out that same November and stood in that exact spot, according to Ruiz, who'd driven her up there herself. She didn't say much. She just stayed a long while, and before she left, she pressed one of the old photographs, the clearest one, Carol Ann laughing at something just out of frame, into the bark of the nearest tree, tucked behind a piece of loose bark where the weather wouldn't reach it. Marcy never found out if it was still there. She liked to think it was. The case was formally closed the following spring. Carol Ann Whitfield's death was ruled a homicide, the sole suspect deceased. The file marked in a way that finally let the state stop calling her a missing person and start calling her something else: found. Denise used part of a small settlement from the county to fund a bench at a trailhead 2 ridges over, with nothing on the plaque but a name and 2 dates. Not the ridge where her sister had been. Somewhere Denise could actually visit, without a permit and a 2-hour drive into the backcountry. A place to sit, not a place to dig. Marcy thought about that bench more than she expected to. About how the whole search had started with one family standing at a trailhead holding up a photograph, and ended with another family finally getting somewhere to sit down. She stood on that ridge a while longer, listening to the wind move through the lodgepole pines. Then she turned and started the long walk back down the mountain, the way people do when they've been carrying something heavy for a long time and are finally ready to set it down.